There we go. We got it. Okay, what do we want? More marginal dollars in the bank account, right? Like if you have a business, that's ultimately what you want because that's the money you get to spend. And we would like fewer obligatory hours to put it there. That's like the promise of all this AI stuff, right? Is you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have to do any work, but I can make all the money. So I'm going to define a couple of things that are going to help us organize stuff. So if you go back through the Baby Bathwater like log of all of the talks, I did a whole bunch of talks on asynchronicity and delegation and assistance and all of that fun stuff. So when I say asynchronous, what I mean is I want to decouple value from time. Okay, so I want to be able to make money non-linearly, right? Like exponentially against the time that is spent by myself and by like employees and all of that fun stuff. Less time, generate more money. Everybody's fine with that? Okay. So we want productivity to look like this, right? Like we're growing and then we're making more of the money, but it actually looks like this or worse. And the question is like, why does this crap happen, right? Like, why did I just add all this like AI crap to my business and then like we're just like making the same amount of money and then I hired more people and now we're making less money? The problem is complexity. Okay, so I'm gonna also define complexity. This is when one thing becomes dependent upon another thing, right? Or specifically generating value, like the money becomes dependent upon synchronous time. So all the time, it's like you add more employees and then more people have more people to talk to, and then they exponentially create meetings and then nothing gets done. I have a whole talk on that. You should watch it in the little app thing. So the solution here is going to be separating what I'm calling intent and action. These are like really, really important things, right? Because intent is the judgment and decision-making stuff. It's all the smart stuff necessary to solve a problem. It is not all the stuff that you do after you have that judgment, that intent. And this was really, really important in the topic of like delegation. It's more important in how you use what we're pretending to call AI right now, or LLMs, large language models. This is like the whole game, okay? So the problem is, as a society right now, when you're like listening to all of the hype in the news and all of this stuff, nobody is actually concerned with creating real intelligence. All we actually want to do is everybody wants to redefine intelligence to just exclude thinking. So that like all of the hype and the confusion around like LLMs and AI and all this stuff is because we're just redefining intelligence to fit the thing that we made, but we're not actually concerned with understanding like what the hell this stuff actually is. So in order to understand intelligence and like where we're at right now, we're going to talk a little bit about brains and like kind of the math that we use to represent brains. Because that's all we're doing, right? We're just trying to create people. We're trying to create minds like with AI and LLMs and stuff. So we should understand categorically how brains are different if we want to understand how AI is different. So I'm going to break all tasks down into three categories. The first one is translation tasks. Okay. So this is like pattern mapping. There's no inherent like goal or anything, right? This is like a translation type task where I want to turn natural language into SQL code to run an analysis in a database or something like that, right? This is like really what LLMs are doing right now. And these are all translation tasks. They're turning one thing into another, right? Evolutionarily, this is like really, really simple organisms that like move towards food and move away from danger. It's just a reaction type thing. So simulation is much more interesting. So this is like all mammals kind of do this, right? Warm-blooded things. It's is like prediction of outcomes. And in when we get into math stuff, it's like having a static goal. Okay. So in like an evolutionary standpoint, this is like when my dog like goes outside and then like looks around in the backyard and she's like, oh, the fence or that spot over there in the sun. She's like imagining what it's going to be like if she goes and lays in those places and then goes off and does like the thing. This is why like cats, when they run, they're like so nimble because they're actually like anticipating where they're going to put their foot. But if you watch like a video of like a lizard or something running, they just kind of flop their shit all over the place because they're cold-blooded, so they don't actually do simulation. Yeah. The other one is you're allowed to laugh. It's fine. Okay, so at the end when I do this Dr. Seuss book, like really ham it up. Like I need all the laughs actually. Okay. Mentalization. So this is like primates and like maybe dolphins. Okay. So this is when you can like anticipate the thoughts of like another mind. So when we saw this happen for like primates, it's like, by the way, imagining your future self counts as a different mind because it's like, I'm not hungry right now, but tomorrow I'm going to be hungry and there's fruit in that tree and everybody's going to like haul ass for that tree to get the food in the morning. So I'm actually going to sleep in the tree, not hungry right now, tomorrow I'll be hungry and then I'll just be next to the food. Primates do that, but other animals don't do it. There's like extra bits in the brain, which if this was a longer talk, we talk about the bits in the brain. Just trust me on that one. Okay, so three different stages. So if we want to categorize this as we're thinking about how we're going to do artificial intelligence, there are three different kinds of problems that we want to solve generally. Okay. The first one is called tabular. It means that you can like actually map out all of the different cases. So like when you play tic-tac-toe, and like I have kids who are my eldest daughter is in 5th grade. She thinks it's really funny to play tic-tac-toe because she's figured out that you can always win or tie if you go first. That's because it's a tabular game. There's only like a finite number of moves. And so when you teach like a artificial mind to solve a problem like that, it's easy because it just looks the answer up in the dictionary, basically, right? So there's also what we call non-continuous learning. So continuous learning is when something is like updating in real time. So your brains do this, right? Like you're taking information right now and then kind of like updating your circuitry for like how you're going to make decisions about stuff. All of the interesting cases for artificial intelligence, right? So we'll have another one called the linear case, which is you just have a single goal. So like predicting housing prices, right? This is like a pretty classic like AI example. The goal is the price you predict is the same thing as what the price actually was, right? So you run what we call like you can like a linear gradient like against it. The goal is very, very simple. It doesn't change. It updates actually on the fly in many cases, but like it only has like one goal, okay? And then the nonlinear case is actually the one that you want to solve, which is I go into ChatGPT and I say how to make my business make more money, right? Like that's like a really nebulous multi-part goal. It has all of these different variables to it or whatever. That's a really, really hard problem to solve. So in translation, right, the way that you know that something is doing like a translating type task is it doesn't update. So like ChatGPT, Claude, like all this stuff, they're all doing translation. Those models are totally fixed. They don't update when you're using them. They're not learning from anything that you're doing. They compressed the internet basically down into a function, and then you put stuff in the function, you get stuff out of the function. Okay. There's lots of cool party tricks that you can do with that make it look like it's thinking, and we're going to talk about those things. But that's all like an LLM is doing. Because simulation, right? Again, like the dog looking at the different stuff, that requires you to hold like a worldview in your head. You're able to predict what's going to happen when you do something. LLMs fundamentally aren't doing that. They're just predicting the next word, but there's no actual like goal. They don't know when they get it right, right? Because how do you know that the next word is like right, right? So it's not updating at all. So interestingly, right, like in like a simulating case for this, like when you train a chess playing robot to play chess, you use simulation, but then when it actually plays the game, it just actually dumps back into the translation phase. It's just a fixed algorithm that just plays chess. And then mentalization, right? So this is like updating in real time and like creating its own goals. Like you create goals, right? Like you have goals for your business, goals for your person. Nobody's like pre-baking that and then you go off and run with it. Like it's happening in real time. Like that's how a human brain works. That's what we want when we say artificial intelligence. That's what we call continuous learning in the nonlinear case, the multivariables, you're updating all the stuff. This is like a good example is like if you could have a chess playing machine that realizes that the other player thinks that the computer is bluffing, right? You're anticipating what the other mind is thinking about your mind. That's really, really hard, right? So a bunch of the guys that invented what we call reinforcement learning, or the things that we do for simulation in the linear case, those guys are like in their 70s. They've been working on this for 50 years. We literally don't have the math to do this. So like if you're worried about like sentient AI, we don't even have AI that can play 2 Atari games back to back and not forget how to play the first one. So the way that we trick around that is we train 2 different systems to play 2 different Atari games, and then we weld them together. And then we pretend like it thinks. So actually, this is all of the shit that like LLMs are doing. So like basically, if you imagine like an LLM is like a giant dictionary, and then it has to go through and search the dictionary for stuff that looks really, really similar. That's all it's doing. We just welded an infinite number of dictionaries together, and then we're burning the forest to search the dictionary. The way that you know is if you ask an LLM what's 2 + 2, it doesn't just activate the relevant bit that does math. It actually like activates the entire network to search through all the things to predict the next like relevant word is probably 4. and it burns megawatts of energy to do 2 plus 2, your brain right now is running on 20 watts, a fraction of a light bulb. That's how you know we're not even remotely fucking close to doing this. So like, you can't be worried right now about sentient AI. You can't, because we literally don't have the math to do it. It goes through what we call catastrophic forgetting. You teach like an LLM to play Atari game A, and then you teach it Atari game B, and you come back to A, it can't do it anymore because it like recruits all the nodes that it used before and then destroys the ability to do the first thing. So don't freak out. That's the first part. But now, like, okay, how do we make a bunch of money doing this shit, right? The important thing here is that, again, LLMs have no judgment. So when you use them, they predict words that resemble judgment. So like my favorite example of this, if you go back to like ChatGPT 3 and you say, I was sitting in my basement and I looked up toward the sky and you ask it to complete the sentence, it says the stars and they were beautiful. And a human says the ceiling, because you can hold a worldview in your head and you're like, if I'm sitting in the basement, the ceiling is above my head, but it's just guessing words poetically, right? So if you go do it right now, if you just go into ChatGPT or Claude and do the same thing, it won't say the ceiling. It'll say the ceiling. It won't say the stars, but not because it's like actually thinking. It's because they just fed a dictionary of lateral thinking problems into the LLM to like help it trick around the convincing the user. Okay. So the other thing too is that people are like, oh my gosh, Claude's getting so much better. Now it just does like all these multi-step like thinking things or whatever. And it'll even say like the language it says is like thinking to find a better answer. It's actually just doing what my college roommate used to do, which is he wanted to stay up all night working on stuff. So he would make coffee and then take the coffee and pour it back into the water reservoir and then like run it back through again, trying to make it stronger. And that's all LLMs are doing, is they're just dumping the result back into like an LLM again and just burning more of the forest to slowly to like refine the answer a little bit. No thinking is happening. Okay, so now we're going to get to the bit where you actually get to use it. Okay, so we set some ground rules for what LLMs are and all of that fun stuff. So you actually already have all three of these types of problem solving things in your company right now, probably. So translation is like low-level talent that can follow instructions, okay? This is a lot like an LLM, right? You give them tasks like, I need you to put all this shit in a spreadsheet. I need you to go update all this stuff. I need you to take this thing and put it over here. Simulation is like your mid-tier talent that has judgment and forethought, okay? So they have like a sense of what is correct. Because remember, like an LLM has no goal. It doesn't know what correct is. It's just guessing words. But much like low-level employees. But mid-tier talent, right? Like basically this is like somebody that can look at something and say, this is acceptable, this is not acceptable. They have judgment, they can make decisions, they can direct the low-level talent. And then mentalization is like your top-tier talent. This is like people that can read other people, right? They can like handle clients, they can make decisions, they can anticipate how someone is going to react to the thing that's going to be sent, not just get the job done and say that it's good. So if we can use those as like frameworks to think about the people in our companies, right? And like how we're going to use LLMs, all of the action part, none of the judgment, all of that is in the translation layer. Anything that you wouldn't give to like a low-level employee as like a task to like do the thing, you really shouldn't be giving to like an LLM. There's lots of fun ways to work around this, but like all of the intent is over in simulation and mentalization. There is no math that exists on the planet that can do simulation or mentalization work. It's not possible. If you've seen somebody do a demo of a thing and you're like, oh my gosh, that response and those insights looked so good, you were probably looking at somebody else's industry that you don't know very well, because the words resembled what a good answer looks like, but anybody in the industry knows that the answer is bullshit. Think of LLMs as assembly line workers, but they're really fast and you get an infinite number of them. Okay, so in like the 1870 to like 1890 range, we invented the assembly line. So we could make skilled goods without skilled labor, right? Completely changed the world. The world is changing literally right now because we reinvented digital assembly line workers. So before you could say, oh, only a skilled person can make a shoe, right? But then we broke a shoe down into putting nails into the heel and punching rivets and lacing the damn thing, etc. So you could just take unskilled labor and have them do one task and then produce skilled goods. But nobody's asking anyone for like quarterly insights from the guy that punches the fucking rivets. So what do I do with all my human talent? We didn't build androids. We don't have little like robot humanoid things walking around. We built mech suits, okay? So this is like your like Iron Man wrapped suit or your Gundam or whatever your favorite cool sci-fi thing is, right? So you can't give action and the intent delegated. You can't give that to an LLM. But what you can do is you can take all the intent from all the smartest people in your company that have way too much stuff to do, and you can have them strip all of the action that they need to take to do those things, and you can pull it out and accelerate their intent, which is like a long way of saying you can hire no more people by just having all of the action stuff done by like LLMs, or to accelerate using like a human in the loop style thing, all of your best people. So I'll give examples because mostly this has been philosophical. So like using LLMs to write like compelling marketing copy that is going to like understand the human experience. If you've tried to do this, it's mostly garbage or lucky. It's really, really easy though to have it generate ideas and then having a human edit all those ideas or like cobble them together, right? So this is sort of like the thing I'm talking about, which is like I use like LMs like a thesaurus like all the time. I'm like, give me 10 words that mean this thing. Give me 10 more words, right? Because half of them are crap, but I have judgment and I just can't type as fast as the stupid thing can, or I can't look it up in the dictionary as fast as I can. Don't use LLMs for insights and recommendations. They're all totally crap and useless. It's just bad because the thing is that you can use LLMs to prep data, summarize like an analysis, document everything that you've done, show like trends, calculate things, etc. Like having judgment doesn't actually take that long, right? And so the problem is that people like have these like automated Slack things that go and like read a bunch of shit and then dump it in there and say like, oh, our recommended next actions are X, Y, or Z. Like, so I have a e-commerce consultancy that does conversion optimization, analytics, and development. And I see a bunch of tools floating around, and it'll be like, oh, recommended action based on like the data from this. It'll be like scale like this Bing ad. And it just has like no context to the fact that that's just like literally not a thing that you can just do. Or it'll be like, oh, take this one affiliate and like 10x it, right? Like again, like there's just no like worldview or understanding of any of the pieces that are going on. And like frankly, like it's just not necessary. Like you can save 95% of the time by using LLMs for things that they're actually good at. So don't use LLMs for novel code writing or architecture. If you see demos of LLMs like writing like entire pieces of software, they're only writing things that have been so documented within an inch of their life, and there are a million examples that are used for like code contests, like etc. That they're just writing like bullshit boilerplate code. Not to mention the fact that like maintaining these things is like actually awful, but like if you're actually doing something that you're going to make money at, it's probably going to be novel. Otherwise, you haven't figured out it's a bad idea yet. You can't use LLMs to write that shit. Uh, it's just not going to happen. But what you can do is have it carry out the syntax for all the bits of that that actually are totally boilerplate, or like heavily documented architecture that you don't need to reinvent. It can write all that stuff like in like seconds. So in my company, right, we have my former college roommate who was writing combinatorial testing software for banks and like wanted to die. And I brought him into my company to build software for doing like business intelligence and conversion rate optimization, right? He uses like Claude Code all the time to carry out the syntax of like extremely specific instructions for things that would take him half an hour to write, but he can read that code in like 3 seconds because he has like a decade and a half of experience of doing this stuff. And so it just accelerates like his ability to produce stuff really, really fast. And as I've talked about in like previous talks, like the most expensive thing in a company is the air gap between two brains that have to communicate with each other. So if you can have one person that doesn't need a bunch of people working under them carrying out instructions, you can move like 10 times as fast with like one person, as long as you're not doing dumb stuff like having LLMs like vibe code important security shit. Don't give LLMs multi-step tasks. They don't actually have a view of the world. They're not holding on to the idea of the thing that you're doing. They're just guessing words. So the longer your task gets, the more it just drifts off into nonsense. But what you can do is create assembly line style agents that are responsible for individual pieces of the task, right? So like in my example, what we have is like, we have little like sub agents that write SQL code. That's their only job. You just write SQL code. The human puts in the words, you turn it into SQL. And then we have another one that joins databases together. And then we have another one that produces like the output. And then I have another one that sits on top and removes sycophantic language and recommendations out of the text, because LLMs do that shit no matter if you tell them to do it or not. But you can have one agent whose only job is to just basically edit text so it doesn't sound stupid. You also can't rely on long context windows when solving problems. So if you're trying to get an LLM to do something and it takes forever because you realize you have to be more specific, or you didn't ask the question that you thought you were going to, etc., you'll find that the longer you go, it just gets weirder and weirder because it starts to like lose its context for where it started, right? So, but you can ask LLMs to produce reusable prompts. So oftentimes what I'll do, right, is like if I'm doing like a complex analysis with some data and I'm trying to filter out bot traffic, for example, like that is sometimes like finding a needle in a haystack, but I have a needle finder, right? I have an infinite number of those. So it'll go through and do this whole thing. And when I get to the end, or I get to a place somewhere in the middle, I'll literally say, what could I have put as an input that would have given me this output on the first try? And it'll write out whatever the prompt is, and then just go test it, because half the time it's bullshit also. But if you can dump it back into an LLM again and then get the output instantaneously, use that as your new starting place, because these things haven't solved for context windows. Also, don't let LLMs evaluate their own work. They have no idea what the hell they're doing. They're just trying to give you words that sound like the words that people use when they evaluate work. They don't have minds. But what you can do is use your really smart people to make checklists, because checklists are how assembly lines make sure that quality is good, right? The person has no idea what a good shoe is, but they do know if the rivets were in the right place and if the laces were correct. So just have it make checklists. Okay, I'm going to switch to the Dr. Seuss bit, and then we're going to do questions. Does that sound good? Okay. I obligatorily have to thank my 10-year-old daughter, Evelyn, for helping me with this segment. I asked her if she would help me prepare this part, and she said yes, but you specifically have to say my name during the talk. Okay, so one of my favorite Dr. Seuss books is The Cat in the Hat Comes Back. It's a story about what happens when you blow off problems that you create and then try really, really hard to use the same mess that you started to solve the same problem. This was no time for hype. This was no time for spin. This was no time for demos. There was work to begin. All that code, cold code, all that code had to go. When our manager went down to the town for the day, she said, somebody has to ship all this today. Somebody has to, you see, and then she picked out two somebodies, Sally and me. Well, there we were pushing our stack, and then who should come up but the cat with a chat. Oh, Sally said, don't you talk to that chat. That chat is a trickster, the Cat in the Hat. He plays lots of hype tricks. Don't you let him draw near. You know what he did the last product year? Play tricks, laughed the chat. Oh my, no. I just want to get out of the snow. Keep your mind on your bill. Just stay there, you two. I'll go in the house. I'll find something to do. Then the chat slid right in. He was up to no good, so I ran in after as fast as I could. Do you know where I found him? Do you know where he was? There he was pushing cake in the tub. Yes, he was. The hot water was on and the cold water too. And I said to the chat, what a bad thing to do. But I like to sell cake in a tub, laughed the chat. You should try it sometime, laughed the chat as he sat. And then I got mad. This was no time for fun. I said, chat, you get out. There is work to be done. I have no time for tricks. I must go back and dig. I can't have you in here selling cake like a pig. You get out of this house. We don't want you about. And then I shut off the water and I let it run out. The water ran out, and then I saw a ring in the tub, and oh boy, what a thing, a big, long, pink chat ring. It looked like pink ink, and I said, will this ever come off? I don't think. Have no fear of that ring, laughed the Chat in the Hat. Well, I'll take chat rings off tubs just like that. And you know what he did with Mother's white press? Now the tub was all clean, but her paper was stressed. Sally looked in, and Sally saw the mess too, and Sally and we didn't know what to do. We should work in the code. But that mess, what a blot. It may never come off, Sally said. It may not. The chat laughed, ho ho. I can make that spot go. It's the way I clean problems like this. It's just so. See here, laughed the chat. It's not hard at all. The thing that takes spots off a white paper is a wall. Then we saw the chat wipe the spot off the page. The page looked all clean, but Wall Street took the rage. Oh, Wall Street spots, he laughed. Let me tell you some news. I'll take spots off the market. All I need is 2 shoes. What shoes did he use? I looked and I knew, and I said to the chat, this is very bad news. Now the spot is all over Dad's investment shoes. But your dad will not know about that, said the chat. He'll never find out, laughed the chat in the hat. The shoes will be fine. I'll rub off the mess on this data down the line. But now we have synthetic data spots. I cried, what a day, synthetic data spots. Can you take them away? Don't ask me, he laughed. You know that I can. Then he picked up the data and away the chat ran. I can clean up the data spots before you count 3. No spots are too hard for a hat chat like me. Then he ran into Dad's bedroom, and then the chat said, it's good news that your dad has a benchmarky bed. Then he took the data crack, and now the bed had the spots, and all I could say was, now what, chat? Now what? But the chat stood still. He just looked at the bed. This is not the right kind of bed, the chat said. To clean up this mess will be hard, said the chat. I can't do it alone, said the chat in the hat. It's good I have agents, said the chat softly said, right here in my hat on the top of my head. It's good to have help. And here with me today, this helps a lot. This is Chat A. And then Chat A stepped out and took the hat off his head, and he said, it's good I have backups, is exactly what he said. Here is Chat B I will tell him about, but I need more metrics. And then I let him come out. And then Chat B said, I think we need Chat C. That spot is too much for just A and me. But now have no fear. We will clean it away. The 3 of us, Chats B, C, and A. Come on, take it away, cried Chat A with glee. I'll hit that old problem with new prompts. You'll see. It comes off the old bed. It goes on the TV. And then little Chat B cleaned up the TV. Then Chat B cleaned the screen and put in data and logs. And Chat B blew it out with some prompt engineering fog. But look where it went. I said, look where it flew. That mess, you blew out the mess. Yes, that part is true, but now you made snow spots. They've spread every way. Let us think about that now, said Chat C, B, and A. With some help, we can do it, said Chat C with a glee. Then pop on his head came Chat D to C. Then pop, 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 Chats E, F, and G. We will clean up this mess. If it takes us all day, we'll clean it all night. We'll scrub it away, said Chats G, F, E, D, C, B, and A. They ran out of the house then, and we ran out too, and the big chat laughed. Now you'll see something new. My chats are all clever. They fire good shots. They've got tools and techniques. They'll kill all the spots. Very clever, I thought. Kill snow spots with tools. That didn't seem right. They were breaking the rules. All this does is make more spots, we yelled at the chat. Your chats aren't enough. Put them back in your hat. Take your chats G, F, E, D, C, B, and A. Put them back in your hat and take them away. Oh no, said the chat. All they need is more help. Help is all that they need, so be calm. Don't yelp. Then Chat G took the hat from the top of his head. I've got Chat H right here to help us, he said. Chats H, I, J, K, L, N, M, but our work is too hard to stop there with them. We need chats N, O, P, Q, and R, S, T, U, V. This job has gone too far. Come on, kill those spots, kill this mess, yelled the chats. They jumped at the mess with the tools, the prompts, and the stats. They packed it in piles, built dashboards and drills, pink metrics, pink benchmarks, and pink little pills. Oh, the things that they did, and they did them so hard. It was one giant system now spread through the yard. But Big Chat stood there and he said, this is good. This is just what I thought. And I knew that they would. With a little more help, all the work will be done. We just need more chat, and I just have the one. Look close in my hands. I have Chat V, and on his head sets W, X, Y, and Z. Z is too small to see, so don't try. You cannot, but Z is the chat who will clean up the spot. Now here is Z you can't see, said the chat, and I bet you can guess what he has in his hat. He has something called Voom, and Voom is hard to get. You've never seen anything quite work like this yet. Why, Voom learns by doing, not copying blindly. Then he yelled, take your hat off, now Chat Z, take the Voom off your head, let it learn, let it be. Hurry, you little chat, 1, 2, 3. And the Voom, it went Voom, and oh boy, what a Voom. Now don't ask me what Voom is, I will never know. But boy, let me tell you, it learns as it goes. Now you see, laughed the chat. Now your mess is all right. Now your work can move forward. Your future is bright. And you know what where my agents are, said the chat. The Voom sent them all back, and they sat in my hat. So if you ever have problems again, I'll be happy to help, but I just won't pretend. With little chats A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, and O, P, and Q, R, S, T, and Chat U, and Chat V, and little chats W, X, Y, and Z. This will be in the app, but I'll also send you these slides if you like. And we have time for questions if you have any questions.
So I redesigned my life based on recommendations from the LLM.
That might be a bad idea.
Overthinking this.
Yeah. Well, here's the thing, right? The thing you have to watch out for is all the incentives are presently aligned to show incremental like improvement on all of these like LLMs as they're trying to like beat each other out. And so they will continuously pretend to be like thinking things, right? So like all of the language around it always says thinking. You see it like go through multiple steps. All it's literally doing is doing all the tricks that I just told you to do, but it you can do them on purpose. You don't actually have to let the LLM decide to do it. It's breaking things into smaller context windows. It's feeding things back through and like doing like checklist checks on things. All of that stuff is stuff that's happening, but like fundamentally, we're basically at a plateau like with LLMs. Like we hit it the moment we created it. All of the opportunity comes in giving things smaller context windows. So like if you've used like Claude like in Excel, like it's amazing because it just shrunk the context window. It just put the damn thing directly into the application, and then all the formulas are already documented there like in human language. So it's super easy to have it like go write formulas for things because again, like the context window is like so small. So the actual game, if you're trying to like innovate and like using LLMs, etc., is just directly embedding them into the work that you're doing to shrink their context windows so that they turn closer and closer into assembly line workers. It's just the same thing over and over and over again. I mean, that's literally what I'm doing. Like our software, you can use a chat interface basically to pull complex analyses, but we're not actually letting it do the analyses. That would be like crazy. All we're letting it do is provide the inputs to the software that we already built and then pull the outputs back out and like present them. So like none of the mechanistic bits that actually provide the results are it responsible for. It's literally just doing the translation layer of putting all of the inputs into the controls that are more complicated than asking it in a sentence.
You talked about we don't have some math
Yeah.
right now. What's your take on quantum computing? Okay. And like where's that headed?
Yeah. Okay. So the question is, I mentioned that we don't have the math to do continuous learning in the nonlinear case, and he was asking about quantum computing and like how that relates. So the thing with quantum computing is when we look at quantum computing and we look at like essentially the math that you have to do to get an output out of like quantum computing, it's fundamentally different than the math that we use in like traditional programming because it's all probabilistic, right? So when we're talking about solving for continuous learning, like that one of the big problems we have to solve is how do you have a system like create its own goals and then go back and like maintain the things that it learned the first time, but be able to like reuse those nodes. So quantum computing, in my opinion, is not like a viable solution to that because we actually have the same problem with quantum computing is we actually have no idea how the hell that works either. And so it's just basically taking confusion and piling it on top of confusion. Uh, there is probably something that's like quite interesting with that, like in the future in terms of like probabilistic node weights and all of that fun stuff. But again, like you'll be dead before they figure it out. Yeah, I mean, really, it's just we got to do something about the kids. Yeah.
So if you're dumping your own education into the learning model
Yeah.
and then asking it in a close, you're not asking it to go solve something specific. You're giving it the, the context. You're giving it the education, the baseline, and then asking it to reorganize or pull answers or predictive language
Yes.
based on your education context. You're saying it's good at that, and that's the way we should be using it.
Yeah. Okay, so just to summarize the question, basically it's I mentioned the idea of like using your own context basically as part of like the input and how to kind of frame that. So yes, so essentially, right, like things that are very well documented. Again, you're just think about the fact that you're making dictionaries. Like this thing is a dictionary searcher, right? And so when you have your own problem in your own data set, labeling that very, very clearly, structuring it in a way that it's easy for it to like pick those things up and manipulate them, etc. That's what it's good at because the thing's trained on human language. So you can just use human language basically to give it contextual clues to increase the probability it does the thing in the way that you expected it to. But again, like uh, you want to give it discrete things that it's supposed to do because if it has to take the output of the first step that it did and then use that as like its starting place to do the next step, you basically like compound the risk of error or hallucination or whatever the thing is. So breaking it into like discrete chunks and using multiple agents for it, given like your own like problems context, is totally the way to go.
So yeah, Matthew, I thought it was really interesting, very tactical. My question is philosophical though
I
as
love
well.
philosophy. Let's
As you know, I wrote a book like 6 months ago that's very philosophical. I have two questions. I'll try to collapse it into one. Like, intelligence is becoming commoditized. It's table stakes, basically, right? Whereas I think the past economy, it's been about scarce intelligence or
Sure.
resources. That's going to become commoditized, but wisdom is not, right? Like, wisdom is where we. So I'm just curious your ideas around look into the future and where does this go? And specifically, this is the second question I'm kind of trying to, like, you probably are aware of like the data problem in AI, which is once AI has consumed all the generally good
Yes.
data, what it does is hallucinates
Yeah.
and creates simulations.
Yeah.
Like, well, what if things were like this? What
Right.
if things were like this? So I'm just curious. I mean, that's a lot of just stuff that I'm throwing out there, and I just kind of want to hear your, bigger picture philosophical thoughts or ideas on.
Okay, so the way that we produce LLMs, right, is you can't literally search through the entire internet like very fast. So we're going through like modal compression. So we're taking all of the words, all of the available information, and we're compressing it down heavily. So there's a couple of things that happen when you do that, right? So my wife is a professor in teaches nutrition, and like one of the problems that she gave like her students in like an assignment was like basically provide a meal plan for this like very specific dietary like restriction for like an athlete, so on and so forth, right? So she says like 30 students in her class. She gets 28 back that all have this like very specific dish, and it's the same in like all of them, right? And so the reason for that, right, is this modal compression that we're talking about here. So when you go and you ask ChatGPT, like, tell me a joke, like, and it comes up with like 50 jokes or whatever, if you just keep asking that over and over and over again in different chats, you're going to get like really, really, really similar outputs. It's almost deterministic, which is actually worse than either being not deterministic or completely deterministic. So what ends up happening is it looks like it can answer into infinity, but it actually just like converges probabilistically to like a certain like set of like answers for things, which is why like if you spend enough time with it, it just ends up being like a broken record on stuff, right? Especially when you're asking a question. So the problem then, right, is we've already given it all of the words. We ran out of words. And because of modal compression, you can't actually have an LLM create its own synthetic data, because it's literally that same problem my college roommate had, right? He can't get double strength coffee by pouring the coffee back through the grinds again. It's just not going to happen. It's going to be slightly stronger and then just slightly less stronger, and it's diminishing returns almost instantaneously. So when you take a near deterministic output and then put it back into the LLM and have it generate novel text, it can't do it. So uh, that's like also kind of like where I'm at with this, where it's like we're at like a pretty hard dead end. Like we ran out of words to put in.
But I think you'd agree that LLMs are just like the first step of like what AI is going to become.
Totally.
It's like it's like the infancy.
Correct.
So I'm just curious, what do you see? What's the next thing after LLM? I know none of us know.
Yeah. So I mean, here's the thing, right? Like science fiction has this like interesting trait where people just try to make all the stuff from science fiction, and then we do a damn good job of it, right? So we will eventually figure out the math for continuous learning in the nonlinear case, right? Like on the scale of humanity, whether it takes 30 years, like that's instantaneous, right? It just so happens that we only live to be like 100 if we're lucky. So we are going to hit an age where things are going to get really weird, because we're going to create minds, and then we're going to have like moral discussions on like when something is a person or not, the way that we define people, and then what rights those things have. Now, unfortunately, we're currently having a problem where we're not even giving rights to humans, but 30 years from now, that is the kind of stuff that we're going to have to grapple with, because uh, you know it's sort of like my daughters are 7 and 10, and there's like this inflection point when you have kids where you realize that your kids now know things that you don't know, and it's like a really kind of like a weird moment where you realize they're becoming their own entity. And I sort of think about the future of like true artificial intelligence like that, where we create an entity that now knows things that we don't know. And I think that's a really, really interesting place to get to, because we're essentially now creating something we're ushering in essentially like another like evolutionary step in like consciousness essentially.
And that's, I'll just ask one more question, then I'll be quiet.
Fun as shit for me.
we're-
Everybody can leave if they want. Yeah.
Where do you see the intertwining, let's say, of this reality and AI? Like, you know, again, hypothetically, just brainstorming, just thinking.
Yeah. Well, okay, so I'll steer that maybe in like a practical thing of like of how we affect humanity, right? So the thing is like we as human beings are commoditizing things within an inch of their life all the time, right? So like one of my favorite things is like uh streaming music has like totally screwed up the music industry, but it's also made live music more valuable, right? So like when people are like, "Oh, are we worried that like human stuff won't be valuable anymore?" People were worried about the shit when we came up with the phonograph. They were like, "Oh, live music is dead. We can record it and play it on records now." And that's obviously not what happened, right? And so the thing is that like I'm excited and like optimistic from the standpoint of the fact that if we can commoditize bullshit labor that humans shouldn't be doing anyway, because we came up with a bunch of fake work to give people salaries to like try to like half-ass solve the wealth inequality problem. If we can just get rid of that and come up with like a universal basic income and let human beings just be human beings, that sounds better to me. But we're like actually stampeding in that direction. Like if there's anything that's like kind of exciting where like the intersection of that's going to be is all of the fake bullshit jobs that we came up with in the last 20 years are vaporizing. But like we don't want humans doing that shit anyway. Nobody should be working in an Amazon warehouse, picking something up and moving it 6 inches to the left. Nobody should be doing data entry into spreadsheets. That is a stupid thing for human beings to spend their lives doing. So again, I think if you do it right, sick. If you do it wrong, it's just a bunch of like dumb things like smacking heads, right? So like the idea of like, oh, isn't this sick? We made a social media thing for all things to talk to other robot things. It's just like a dumbass party trick. Like it has like no material value, right? Because you're taking a thing that has no worldview and it's like, oh, a thing is pretending to write words like a person write words and then respond with words like a person write words. Isn't that neat? And it's just like we're pretending like it's an ant farm for minds, but it's literally just watching a bunch of dictionaries like ram into each other. It's super stupid. But if you're talking about like having LLMs and like agents like actually deploy one another for specific tasks, if you line them up like an assembly line, you can make a shit ton of money doing that. Ask me how I know. So like if you have something like, for example, like in mine, I have lots of clients' data sets or whatever that we work in. We have like a specific layer on top where I can use like a company, like a Proteus company wide agent to then like command the downstream agents to pull specific data so I can do comparisons on them. But it works its way down the tree because if that singular agent was trying to dive into all the raw data itself and then come back up for like air, it just loses the plot like instantaneously. So again, I think the assembly line analogy is actually like really, really helpful because again, you're taking unskilled labor, right? And trying to create a skilled output, and that's how you do it. That was such a great question. Yeah.
How do you feel about marketing interfacing with the human element of sales? We were just having a discussion about this earlier. The potential for these LLMs to, again, being taught internally. Here's the context. We're giving, don't hallucinate, don't go, but just using this set of data, predictively, prospective customers ask very similar questions, interact in a very similar way, up to a certain point where the human takes over.
Yeah. So like customer service is an interesting example for this, right? Because like most customer service is just answering questions that are already in an FAQ, like just all day, or providing like a link to a thing. So like our clients, like we work with some brands that are doing like $100 million a year in gross revenue D2C. And they're like, how should we be leveraging AI chat agents? And I'm like, providing your return policy. Like, cool, we just deleted half of the sport tickets, like that kind of stuff. Or like, but then it's like, what shoes should I buy for spring? Don't let an LLM do that shit. Like it doesn't wear shoes.
Okay. Well, yeah, and that's an interesting interesting question. I work with a company that has used an AI bot in the marketing aspect of it, meaning that it's interfacing with new prospects coming into the funnel.
Right.
And predictably, they talk about very similar things.
Totally.
You know,
No, again, like right, heavily repeated things, right, that can go into a dictionary, that counts, right? So if they're asking the same like 9 questions over and over and over again, put them in a dictionary, let it answer that dictionary question. The 10th one, a human does it, and they do it real good because they don't have to do the other 9.
right. It seems to work well in that context.
Yeah, exactly. Again, like it's repeatable stuff. Again, if an assembly line worker could provide the answer because they have a dictionary in front of them, fine, let an LLM do it.
When you're talking about the assembly line and not having each agent do their own task, is that a human checkpoint in between each task, or are they communicating to each other, like agent one?
What a great question. Okay, so the question is, when you're lining up LLMs in like an assembly line, is there a human checkpoint between each of the steps, or do the agents feed their output as the input to the other? So the short answer is the same way you would set up like an assembly line. If I was starting the factory to make shoes right now, at the beginning, I'd put a human in checkpoint in between each one of the steps to make sure that I've not specified the task wrong, right? Because it was, oh, it's so correct to me. Like I couldn't possibly cock this up because I know that when you put the nails in the heel of the shoe, they go in this way, not that way. It's like my 7-year-old did the fun thing in school where they ask you to like write the instructions for making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and then the teacher just acts like real dumb, right? And they just lose all intent. That's what LLMs are. So the thing is, like, at the beginning, right? Like you're looking for reliability and that sort of thing. At the point that you would feel comfortable in like an assembly line that they're just nailing it every time because you've like removed all the ambiguity, and then you would pull yourself like out of the loop. You do the exact same thing, right? And then because it's an LLM and the structures for like sub-agent things are set up really well, you can have them just like literally deploy each other next thing down the chain. So highly repeatable stuff, totally fine. But yeah, it's basically the same way. Again, same way that you would set up an assembly line for realsies. Yeah, so you can like set up like multi-agent like networks like using, you can do it using like Claude and things like that. So we create like the little sub agents given their little like context, and then in our code itself, then we like hit those basically like programmatically, like you would call a function essentially. So it's just like a little mixture of using code, but in the place of where you would have like a function, you basically have it go call the agent and treat it as like an input output node. 100%. So okay, so the question is around like SEO and then like how that relates now to basic. Okay, so the reality is that like ChatGPT, for asking it like what's the best like shoes or airsoft gun or whatever the thing is, it's just new Google. So it's like literally just another marketplace where they're just gonna like sell ads for having shit like come up first, and then they're gonna say they're not, and then they're gonna kind of do it a little bit, and then they're definitely gonna do it. Like it's just the end shitification of like every single platform, right? It's like you serve the users, then you serve the businesses, and then you serve the shareholders. Like it's just going to be over and over and over again. So 100%, it's just going to turn into the next billboard. And so how do you leverage it then is like, if you're on a platform like Shopify or whatever, they have like knowledge base, which is a thing where you can just literally feed in FAQs for like exactly the questions. Cause like ChatGPT, again, it has no intent. And the same question is like, what if a customer asks like a really specific question about a product? It can't do it. So they're like literally cheating by saying, dear person who makes the shoes, you should just give us all the answers to the really specific questions. And then when like ChatGPT like trips on its face or whatever, it's already slurped in all of these questions from Shopify, its partner in making the money, to just like have the answers all of a sudden. So again, they couldn't solve for having a worldview, simulating, or mentalizing. So they just added more things to the dictionary. Like I really want you guys to think about this as just a giant ass dictionary under compression. Yeah, I mean, this is the thing, right? Like Reddit's like a similar thing, which is that like if you can scrape it, like then it's gonna get scraped for content, like for sure. So if you think like the people running Claude, or you think about the people running ChatGPT, they're just looking for hyper specific, domain specific answers to things so that they can scrape those like dictionaries like Reddit and then figure out how to like weight all the answers so they can cheat at the fact that it can't think.
My question is a little bit more technical.
Yeah.
So I have AI bots that can sell a service over the phone, schedule, collect payments, send out an agreement, everything's automated. And like, I would say 70% of the customers that interact or potential clients interact, they shout on the phone, talk to a person like 10 times,
Yeah.
and they hang up,
Yeah.
and I don't have a successful close rate. Therefore, even though I have a successful technology built out, I'm not driving leads there.
Yeah.
Because the human psychology behind it is I don't want that. Even like I have chat bots for customer service.
Color me on.
And so, I'm sorry, what'd you say?
That was being funny.
Oh, okay. So, they're not, people aren't wanting to interact.
That's correct. So the question is, I set up a sales system using a robot. Turns out people hate robots.
And so how long do you think, in your opinion, is it going to take for society to accept this?
They won't. They just won't. Like, you hate it.
So what is the point then? Like,
The point is, don't do that.
Well, I mean, if you invest and you take all the time to
Yeah.
do this, or build out agents, because ultimately,
Yeah. So here's the
you're
thing.
gonna want them to perform simple
Yeah.
tasks.
So that's the thing, is that you took a thing which is like the experience of interacting with another mind, like mentalizing, right? And then you gave it to an LLM to do, and then it fell on its face because it has no world. It's just trying to guess the words to say. And that's an objectively terrible experience, right? So like, it's the wrong task actually for an LLM. That's actually like a good example of something that like it won't work. Like, you'll probably have to wait 30 years for something that sounds coherent enough that it's a decent experience. And by then we've got like so many other problems. So like, what I would do in that case, right, is I would take all of the bits that are like time consuming, that aren't the talking to the human, and I would absolutely create automation agents for like literally all those things. They might even take the transcripts directly from those calls and then carry out all the actions. But like, the human has like the mentalizing brain, and you can't replace that. So a human has to do that bit, or that you have to change the modality of how they communicate so that there's no mentalizing like happening at all. It's a sucky answer, I know.
It's your official stance, like customer service representatives, live humans will not be replaced by AI, they'll just be assisted?
Correct, because for the speaking bit, so like, you can ask the little dictionary searcher like, hey, what's like the return window on this thing, and then it can go look it up in the dictionary and then say the words real good. But as soon as it gets into like an actual like human interaction like question that doesn't lie in a dictionary, a human has to do it. We literally don't have anything that's capable of doing that. There's no technology that exists. Yeah.
I just find the resistance of wanting to have any interaction with AI.
Yeah, it sucks. I don't like it. Well, this is sort of like the thing. Like, I have clients that like they're like, hey, we want to put a quiz on our website for people to buy our product. And I was like, okay, just like hold the phone for like a second. Have you ever used one of these personally and thought, this was so amazing? I'm so glad I filled out this 10-part quiz. Now I definitely know what I want to buy. And they're like, God, no, I hate them. And I was like, okay, well, I mean, I don't know why you want this thing to work then, because you literally.
But yet, everyone is selling some sort of like bot automation to replace.
That's the whole point. That's the whole point of this talk, is that people will lie and try to sell you robots that can think, but they can't think. So they're selling it. But like, I mean, hell, like, I'll sell you shit that don't work. Yeah.
But my point is this. I mean, you're saying that AI is only going to be used as this back office function.
I'm saying it's gonna be used for translation tasks. Oh, like, I'm sorry. I'm not saying it. I'm not saying it's going to. I'm saying it literally can only do those things. It's very, very good at faking doing the other things, but it literally can't do it. It like cannot hold a worldview. It has no idea what correct is, because literally the way that the LLMs are set up, that tool that you're using, it fundamentally isn't built into there, because no one knows how to do it. The smartest person on the planet, Richard Sutton, he's like 80 years old and like has been working in reinforcement learning for like actually like 50 or 60 years. He's like, oh yeah, I go to 50-50 chance we figure this shit out in 30 years. I'm supposed to wrap up in a second, but I'm loving the questions. Yeah, totally. So the question is like for things like where you like insta response, like need something for like for customer service or whatever, what about using an LLM for that? Again, like human in the loop type stuff. Like an LLM can jump in and send a text message and probably get like stumble through the first part of the conversation. And then as soon as it just like weaves off into now it requires like a mind, a person could jump in at that point because you willed it down now to like 1% of the audience basically that's still with you like kind of at that point. Perfect example of human in the loop. All right. Thank you very much, y'all.